Show me how you love me. Go! Fuck you!
What? Long time. We all.
When you've taken your last step. When you can't go no more.
The movie begins in the frostbitten, industrial heart of Magnitogorsk, Russia, where Kyle LeBlanc, an American expatriate, spends his grueling days working in a steel mill, the air thick with smoke and the clang of metal. After his wife tearfully accuses him of neglecting her, Kyle decides to visit her during his upcoming holiday, determined to mend their fractured relationship. While driving home, he calls to surprise her with the news of his visit, but instead hears her panicked screams as a man named Sergio Kovic violently attacks her, stabbing her when she resists. Kyle races home in a frenzy, his heart pounding, only to find her lifeless body on the cold floor, while Kovic flees into the shadowy night. Kyle chases Kovic down in a blind rage, tackling him in a desperate, chaotic struggle, and both are dragged to the police station. However, Kovic uses his influence to bribe the judge, who declares him innocent due to a lack of evidence, the courtroom buzzing with murmurs of injustice. Consumed by rage, Kyle swiftly grabs a guard's gun and shoots Kovic multiple times right in the middle of the courthouse, the gunshots echoing like thunder, an act of vengeance that lands him a life sentence without parole. He is transported to the notorious Krivai prison, a fortress of despair, where the warden, General Hrushchev, brutally punishes an inmate in front of the newcomers, his whip cracking like a warning to all who dare defy him. During intake, Kyle is beaten by Lieutenant Talik for refusing to hand over his wedding ring, the last symbol of his wife, which Talik forcibly tears from his finger, leaving Kyle bloodied but defiant. That night, officers deliver another American inmate, Billy Cooper, to a cell where he is brutally beaten and raped by Andre, a gangster who bribes guards to fulfill his twisted desires, the cell walls echoing with Billy's cries. The next morning, a broken Billy is carried to the infirmary, his body trembling, while Andre walks free, smirking with chilling confidence. When Andre taunts Kyle, mocking him in the same way his wife's killer did, Kyle lunges at him, fists flying, but is quickly subdued and thrown into solitary confinement, the heavy doors slamming shut behind him. In the filthy, suffocating cell, Kyle's despair deepens, the walls closing in as he attempts a hunger strike and tries to end his life, but fails, his body too weak to follow through. Haunted by vivid flashbacks of his wife, her laughter and warmth urging him to survive, he eventually begins eating the meager food provided to him, his will to live flickering back to life. Soon, he is taken out and transferred to a cell with inmate 451, a man rumored to have killed his previous cellmates, his presence as cold and menacing as the prison itself. Upon arriving, Officer Tylok warns Kyle to be careful, offering to change his cell in exchange for money, but Kyle refuses, his pride unbroken despite his fear. Kyle grows uneasy around his cellmate due to his dark reputation, but he does not speak a word to him, the silence between them heavy with tension. After a few days, his brother-in-law visits, assuring him that he is working to secure his release, but urging him to bribe the guards to make his life easier in the meantime. Later, Kyle meets Billy in the prison yard, who reveals he's serving a year and a half for driving under the influence and crashing his car into a restaurant, his voice trembling with regret. As they talk, another inmate, Malachi, a wheelchair-bound man with a sharp mind, joins them, explaining how things work in Krivai, his words laced with both wisdom and warning. Malachi reveals that Andre is part of the Russian mafia, a man who pays the guards handsomely to get his way and leads a powerful gang inside the prison, his influence stretching like a shadow over the inmates. During the discussion, Malachi also tells them about his own connections, offering to help if they ever need anything, his tone both reassuring and calculating. Kyle begins to settle into the grim routine of prison life, but Andre constantly teases him, provoking him to fight.
What?
His taunts cutting deeper with each passing day. After his cellmate 451 tries to choke him in their cell, Kyle pays a guard to move him, but the guard demands more money or time, leaving Kyle trapped in a dangerous limbo. Days later, a massive fight is organized in the prison, the air electric with tension as inmates gather to watch. Malachi explains that General Hrushchev arranges these fights, gambling on the outcomes, his eyes gleaming with greed. Andre, the prison's undefeated champion, steps into the ring, his fists like iron as he brutally beats his opponents, the crowd roaring with a mix of fear and excitement. While watching the fight, Kyle asks Malachi if his cellmate ever participates, but is told that 451 refused years ago, a decision the guards resent but tolerate because they profit from the fear he instills in others. After a few days, Billy is taken to Andre's cell again, where he tries to fight back, but is overpowered and rushed to the infirmary, his body broken once more. While working with other prisoners, Kyle unintentionally offends gang members. They report to the officer that Kyle disrespected them, and the officer permits them to exact their revenge, resulting in Kyle being mercilessly beaten. Kyle is once again thrown into solitary confinement, where he hears another inmate in the adjacent cell and attempts to communicate through the wall. As time drags on, he becomes increasingly affected by the relentless cruelty of the prison, where gangs clash violently and murder fellow inmates over trivial disputes. During a work detail, a mine explosion injures several guards, and Billy seizes the opportunity to attempt an escape with another inmate. However, the escape fails, his companion is shot dead, and Billy is dragged back to the prison. Meanwhile, Kyle, sent back to solitary, begins to focus on self-improvement, building his strength to endure. Yet his cellmate grows uneasy, sensing that Kyle is losing his true self. When another fight is arranged, Kyle faces Andre, who quickly overwhelms him.
The party is about to begin!
But in a shocking turn, Kyle makes a fierce comeback, savagely biting Andre's neck and killing him, leaving everyone stunned as he suffers a mental breakdown. This fight marks a pivotal moment, and Kyle goes on a winning streak, earning the respect of the inmates. However, his escalating brutality and frequent killings alarm his allies, Malachi and Billy, who worry about his transformation. Returning to his cell, inmate 451, deeply concerned, asks Kyle, "Do you even know who you are?" but realizes Kyle may be too far gone to return. When Kyle's brother-in-law visits again, Kyle stops him from pursuing his release, convinced nothing will change and unwilling to cling to false hope. During Russian Independence Day celebrations, Malachi urges Billy to escape but betrays him to the guards in exchange for medicine. After being tortured, Billy is transferred to a new cell with Valia, who rapes and tortures him to death after Billy spits in his face. Kyle discovers Billy's battered body and rushes to save him, but Billy succumbs to his injuries, leaving Kyle with a final warning. Don't let them turn you into something you're not. Like countless others who perish under Kravai's horrors, Billy's body is buried in secret, without a trace. Inspired by Billy's words, Kyle takes a stand, refusing to fight any longer. As punishment, he is hanged outside in the freezing cold, a spectacle for all to witness. Despite the harsh conditions, Kyle endures, refusing to participate in their corrupt games. Meanwhile, 451 uncovers Malachi's betrayal of Billy and decides to punish him by dousing him in flammable liquid and setting him ablaze. The flames trigger memories of 451's own abuse by his teacher, reminding him of the revenge he once took in the same manner. Kyle's unwavering courage inspires the other inmates to rise up. Rival gangs resolve their conflicts and unite, refusing to fight one another. With each prisoner rejecting the system, the officers are left powerless, unable to punish them all. This infuriates General Khrushchev and his men, who once profited heavily from gambling on the fights. Blaming Kyle for the rebellion, they plot to eliminate him to restore order. Kyle is moved from confinement to the infirmary, where he hallucinates his wife, Grace, who expresses joy at his return. When he laments missing her, she comforts him, saying, "Nobody is ever gone as long as someone remembers them." Enraged by Kyle's defiance, Lieutenant Tylok forces him to fight Mylok, the prison's most dangerous inmate. During the fight, Kyle bangs on the wall, just as he did in solitary, and Mylok recognizes him as the only one who ever tried to communicate. Mylok immediately stops the fight and befriends Kyle. Frustrated, Tylok points a gun at them, demanding they fight, but Kyle and Mylok turn on him instead, sparking a riot. The prisoners revolt, breaking out of their cells. Tylok shoots Mylok multiple times, but Mylok still manages to overpower him. As chaos erupts, Kyle tries to comfort the dying Mylok, but he succumbs to his injuries. The guards eventually regain control with reinforcements, forcing the prisoners back to their cells. Kyle and his cellmates sit in despair as Kyle reflects on his wife's murder, admitting that when he lost himself, he lost her too, but vows not to repeat the mistake. Seeing Kyle's frustration, 451 offers to help him escape. Back in their cell, He hands Kyle documents exposing 20 years of murders and corruption at Kravai, explaining that his plan involves one final fight. Though reluctant, Kyle agrees, seeing it as his only chance for freedom. 451 reflects that while 7 inmates and a guard died in the riots, it was a victory because, for the first time, the prisoners stood up for their rights instead of fighting each other. When Kyle agrees to another fight, General Khrushchev sees it as an opportunity to kill him and end the rebellion. The next day, Kyle faces Valya in a brutal match, dislocating his shoulder. Valya tries to stab Kyle with a pocket knife, but accidentally kills another gang leader. Kyle avenges Billy by slamming Valya into a pole, declaring, "This is for Billy." As 451 predicted, the officers planned to take Kyle outside the prison to execute him. Meanwhile, 451 sneaks into the garage through a hidden passage, attacks the guards, and rescues Kyle. After retrieving his wedding ring and crushing a guard with a car, Kyle changes into a guard's uniform, urging 451 to join him. But 451 refuses, handing over the documents and urging Kyle to expose Kravai to the world. As Kyle drives away, 451 returns to General Khrushchev's office and kills him in an act of vengeance. The guards capture 451, but Kyle escapes. Back in the U.S., Kyle publishes the documents, leading to Kravai's closure within 3 months.